We are thrilled you're here. Thanks to those of you who are joining. I see a couple people who have just joined us, and we do record these. We have a bunch of people who like to watch these on demand. So if you're not on video, you don't have to be. We're enabling the chat. For those of you guests who are here, we have Dr. Ann Welton, and I'm going to introduce her in a second. So please utilize the chat to ask your questions. Hopefully you have come with some questions. I will say that it can be, even though it's a small group right now, I know it can be a little bit intimidating to put your questions just out there for everyone to see. And if that's the case, direct message me your question. And I'll lay a little bit more ground rules in a little bit. I want to draw your attention to the chat. We have a race approved webinar coming up next week. And that is a free continuing education webinar. It's ER stabilization for early career GPs. The other thing that I'm going to do is just share my screen really quickly. So if people are not part of the Ready Vet Go community, please join the community. It is free to join, and it's where we host all of these events, the drop-in Ask a Mentor Anything, and all of our race-approved CEs. And for new and early career veterinarians, this is a place for you to come and ask any questions about medical cases. So use that QR to join the community, and I'll put this up again at the end. I'm going to now, in 1 second, once I get it up, introduce our mentor who's here today. Dr. Ann Welton is a Ready Vet Go mentor, and she is a native Southern Californian, and she went to UCSB for her undergrad and ended up living there, which is where she is now. She went to Michigan State University College of Veterinary Medicine, and has been out for quite some time. And after graduation, did an internship at California Animal Hospital in West LA. She returned to Santa Barbara. She's been practicing full-time there, seeing dogs, cats, small exotic companions. She's been doing that for over 20 years. She was also the medical director at a multi-site practice for 12 years and is still practicing and is, like I said, a Ready Vet Go mentor. She has a husband and a daughter and some dogs. She loves reading, has been in a book club for almost 20 years, which I think is amazing. And I can't wait to ask about that. She loves movies and participates in the local cinema society, and just has a wealth of information and is super easy to talk to. And you can ask any questions of Dr. Ann. I have questions that were submitted to me from people who are not able to attend, but we have a couple of people here. So I'm going to just ask you, Dr. Ann, to just say hello and anything that I left out of your bio, and anything you want to say before we start.
Not really. You didn't leave anything out. I will say I was sharing with Danny before she opened everything up, but I'm a little frazzled because I just sat in major amounts of traffic and I'm excited I made it on time. So
I think that's very impressive.
Yeah, I pulled up the map app and it kept telling me what time I was going to arrive, and I'm like, oh my god, like it was 4:55. So yeah, I'm good.
You made it. Deep breath.
I brought my water bottle. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just sitting here. So
if you want to take a little moment and catch your breath and get water or anything, you are welcome to.
Good.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm happy to have you take a deep breath. And for those of you guests that are here, a deep breath.
Okay, someone that loves the Sarah J. Maas. Yeah, I just finished all of those not that long ago, and then I just did the Fourth Wing and the Iron Flame afterwards. So if you're a reader into all of that fantasy stuff, I definitely recommend those.
Wait, so what's SJM?
Sarah J. Maas. These books right here.
Okay.
They're fantasy novels. I've been an avid reader forever, and I'm all over the map as far as what kind of reading I do. But these are my like guilty pleasures because they're some of them can be a little racy, which is definitely fun, gets you out of your head. But I have always loved the fantasy kind of genre, which is fun. But then I have my whole section over here, which is veterinary business and veterinary medicine type stuff too.
I like that. That's more like hidden.
Oh, it's down. Well, it's down over here. It's like right there. like, I don't know. I don't know what happened there, but interesting stuff kind of things. So yeah, they're down below.
I love that. And I think that that's like just a really important, fun way to kick off this meeting today. And Chelsea, thanks for dropping that in. I
Yeah.
mean, we all have lives. Like these drop-in Ask a Mentor sessions. They're different for those of you who are in the Ready Vet Go mentorship program. We have our pack meetings, which are still not super structured, but you know, just a little bit of a different style. So this is a place you can come and get book recommendations. I'm personally going to take a note of that book recommendation. I'm in a book club. I've been in it for 7 years, and we all rotate. And I tend to like pick books that I feel are like very literary, or like somehow I should be, I don't know, showing some side of myself that's a little more serious. And then the whole book club regrets it every time. So I'm always on the lookout for things that are a little bit lighter.
Those are definitely lighter. They're not really great book club book options though, because there's not really a whole lot to talk about. Like
I'll have to get recommendations from
maybe
you.
some of the dysfunctional relationships, you could have that kind of a conversation, but I think you'd have to have a line first before you launch that. So
well, keeping the book conversation going. So thank you to Christopher for dropping a question into the chat. This is kind of how it will go today. I'm going to moderate. I will read questions from the chat. We are also a small group, so you can feel free to come on video or leave your camera off and just come off of mute to put your questions into the chat. But the next question we have is says, speaking of vet business books, did you take any business courses when you were in veterinary school?
Heck no. So we got, let's see, we got like 3 lectures from, and I'll remember his name when I find his book, because I had bought his book. This one. And he's still pretty active in the veterinary business. And I remember we found out later on that actually Michigan State was pretty ahead of the curve as far as including any sort of business information, because that was 25, 26, 27 years ago, something like that. And I can't get the book out. My thing's in the way, but anyway, I'll find it. But no, so we had like, if it was 6 lectures, it was generous for me to say that. And it included topics of like creating a business plan, and it talked about legal kind of things, legal and ethics about veterinary medicine, but it wasn't real specific about this is how you do it. And one of the things that I've definitely noticed is that for me, leadership essentials are seriously lacking in veterinary medicine programs. So there may be business programs out there, but a lot of times the leadership skills, which to be honest, I think every veterinarian needs, because you're naturally a leader in your practice. You're leading a team. If you've got a tech with you, even if it's not somebody that's assigned to you, you are part of the head honchos in the team, and nobody teaches you how to do that. And there's definitely wrong ways to do that. The reason I have all these books is because I was put in the leadership position without any experience and without any guidance. So I made it up as I went along. And so I ended up going backwards and trying to figure out a lot of stuff. And I think I'm much better at it now, I hope. But I think that's a big hole that we need to fill in veterinary medicine. I know. So if you're trying to think of, there is a specific veterinary business course through UC Davis that I took 2 years ago now. That is much more specific about veterinary business. And it's offered through the UC Davis. It's a co-production of UC Davis Veterinary Medicine and the UC Davis School of Business. And it's a 4-month course, 3-month course. I can't remember, but it gets very, very specific. So if you're thinking of starting your own veterinary hospital in the long run, I would say, yes, seek out those things if that's one of your goals. And go into it with an open mind too, because you may discover going into it, oh wait, this isn't really what I wanted to do. And that's okay too. So, because there is a lot into it, a lot to it. And I appreciate knowing a lot about it. And I did decide afterwards, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to own. Like, yeah, I don't need to do that part, but I do enjoy the leadership portion of it. I don't really want to get into the weeds of business ownership, at least at this stage in my career. I think if I had those business essentials or leadership essentials earlier on, maybe I would have gone into owning a practice, but I kind of went a little backwards. So that's okay. Yeah, what else? Oh yeah, you got it. You found it.
Yeah, I think that's the course that you said you took. So I just
That
dropped
is,
that. Okay, great. So I dropped that in the chat for those of you who are interested. Do you feel, Anne, like as having been a medical director and working with mentees over the years, do you feel like things are changing with the business education that students are getting? Because like I had the same thing as you, 20 something years
yeah,
ago, pretty minimal. And it's such an important part of what we do. Obviously we include it in the mentorship program, and I'm always shocked when I put it in the Ready Vet Go mentorship program as an entire module talking about money. I just thought people would be so bored by that, and hands down, everyone loves it, and everybody asks for more content about finances. So
right.
what are you seeing as like a trend over the last many years in this profession?
I think we've definitely focusing on it more and more for sure. I have to be honest, I don't know if I've seen a whole heck of a lot of it in the new grads, except for the new grads that are interested and seeking it out. So I don't see it integrated quite yet as much as I think we should be integrating it. But I think there's more and more opportunities out there that there didn't used to be. And I feel like that's come around because we really had to. Because I think the business has changed in the time since I've graduated on some essential level. I think one of the more interesting things that now of course I can't remember, I'm going to spout things. I am constantly listening to podcasts and reading articles and stuff like that. And honestly, my memory sucks for trying to remember where exactly I heard this. I try to write stuff down, but I'm not always good at it. But there was a study that came out in 1999, which was right when I was graduating, about veterinary business. And I think it was one of the very first, state of the industry type studies. And what the conclusion was a veterinary business study. It was like Mark, I don't remember who it was, but one of the conclusions they came to was that prices had been stagnant in the industry for at least 2 or 3 decades. And so we were running business practices at like 70s prices, and everyone kind of realized, oh, maybe we should start charging for what we're worth, right? Essentially, all of us got into this business. A lot of mom and pops were just trying to, make a living, but not, they didn't have a business head, so they didn't necessarily charge for sure what we were worth. And so there were a lot of practices that were, keeping the doors open, but they weren't necessarily attractive to other business owners because there wasn't a big profit margin. And so the industry kind of read that study and then started to go, oh, maybe we should charge for what we're worth. And so what's happened is that we've had increase in prices, and it's not just corporate coming in, because this is even before corporate really took off. And so we started increasing prices as an industry, on average about twice as much as the cost of living. And so we've seen the increase in prices go from stagnant for 3 decades to dramatically higher, but it should have been going up. So that's actually reasonable. But what we've had as a result, at the same time, we have ridiculous amounts of people looking for veterinary services, and that wasn't there before. And so people are all of a sudden coming in, and now they're noticing the cost difference, and now it's an issue, and now it's become a big stressor. And I kind of forget where I'm going with that point, but the same time that people are seeking veterinary services, we're actually starting to charge what we're worth, but now they're comparing it to what it used to be, and it's not the same. Corporate comes in and jacks it up even more in some cases. So again, I forgot where the question came from, but I got distracted. But that was an interesting revelation to me, that the whole feeling that veterinary prices have gone up dramatically is actually true, because it has gone up quite significantly over historic prices, but it was a catch up kind of a thing. And we need to figure out how to balance pricing with what we're offering, the value for our services. And also within communities, I think we need to balance that level of pricing with, it's not just standards of care, but there's a whole word for it, making care affordable and available to people that don't necessarily have the resources for the level of care that a lot of people are kind of demanding. So
Yeah, like spectrum of care.
Spectrum of care, that's the word.
Yeah. There was so much good information. I was just thinking, I'm so glad I recorded this so I can go back and write this stuff down, because these are the questions that come up. And I was thinking that, for the new grads, and I know there's some new grads on this call right now, like they don't have necessarily that historical perspective, like you were just saying. And I just am imagining what it's like to be an early career veterinarian and walk into the exam rooms and be faced with clients who are saying prices just shot way up. And these early career and new veterinarians are kind of dealing with like our stagnation that we did over the last couple of decades.
Right.
So I loved that answer. I feel like I could keep asking you all these questions, but I know we have new vets here who have joined us, and I'm just going to pause. And if anybody wants to come off mute, I don't see anything in any other questions. I see a comment from Christopher. I'm going to come off mute, or I'll stop and let you guys come off mute if you have questions that you want to put to Dr. Ann.
Christopher, the veterinary PCE index, is that the veterinary price? I'm trying to remember what that is. I know there's the consumer price index that you can look for, which is across other industries.
Veterinary
yeah,
PCE,
there's definitely a lot of resources out there to try and keep yourself in line and personal consent. Oh, okay, there you go. But there's a lot of different of those kinds of resources out there, so that you can make sure that if you're in a position to set prices, that you're setting something at a reasonable level for your community, for the level of services that you are offering. There's I think one of the things that is stuck in my mind when I was learning about business is kind of when you're trying to break things down, a practice, if you use the rule of 20%, like you should spend 20% paying your staff, 20% paying your doctors, 20% buying your goods and your consumables, 20% paying all of your other bills, like just keeping the doors open, like the heat, the electricity, the cable, the insurance, your rent, all of that. And then hopefully 20% somewhere in there is your profit and reinvestment in the business. So that was kind of like a big realization to me, like just what the numbers all kind of mean. And you can manipulate those a little bit so that, maybe you instead spend 25% on your staff and 15% on your consumables. You figure out some way to work with like an online pharmacy to keep that number down or something like that. And then you maybe can pay your staff more or something like that. Depends on what you value. So
yeah, this is really good information, and I'm thinking of ways that we can incorporate this in some of the like printed content that we put out for the early career vets, because I think understanding like those buckets, the 20 20 20 is really helpful. One of the things that I hated as a new grad that I just love now is that my practice owner had us look at the books. He was an independent practice. I was the second doctor joining this kind of rural practice. It had just been him for a long time. He just opened it all up and he wanted me to look at everything. I was like, I'm a veterinarian now. I did not want to look at the numbers. And he was like, you're going to look at the numbers. And to this day, I thank him for that, because it really gave me an understanding and an appreciation of how what I brought in as the new vet really affected like all those buckets.
Right. And then that's very ahead of the times, because they call that open book management now. And it's a thing. Like, so like, and actually there's a lot of business professionals that feel like open book management should be there for not just the leaders, but everywhere down your team, so that they know where everything is coming from. And if you discount your services 20%, where's the profit in reinvesting in your hospital? That's 20%. So you've just basically given stuff away for free if you do a 20% discount, which I know that doesn't necessarily compute, but it's absolutely true, because if you only charge somebody 80% of what you just did, that's just covering your costs to do things. So, which is a fascinating realization, honestly.
That is fascinating. And I don't think that's the way a lot of our brains think. At least it didn't for me. So yeah, I love
I didn't for years. I mean, I didn't have any sort of concept on how all of that worked.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm going to keep monitoring the chat for other questions, but one question that I got before this from somebody who couldn't attend is kind of shifting gears a little bit, and that is about how, like, you seem to be somebody, at least what we can read in your bio, somebody who really puts value on things outside of just being a veterinarian. So you're a mom and you love books and you love movies and make time for some of these other things. How do you do that as a busy veterinarian?
Excellent question. Honestly, I think it's just prioritizing, but coming up with those commitments that are harder to get out of for whatever reason. So a book club, like, I really got to know my friends. We formed this book club together. There was 4 of us that first started. We were actually just talking about this because Monday was our last book club. And there were 4 of us that started it, and we rapidly started inviting people into it. And it is probably one of the most fulfilling things. It's one of the things that feeds me the most. And so if you have something that you really look forward to and you really commit to, and you make it somehow so that you're accountable to it, if it's not just something that you have to do, if it's a group activity, there's other people involved, then I feel like that you actually make it happen. I've always been a humongous fan of storytelling, and in all the various ways, TV, movies, books, any of that kind of stuff. I enjoy not just fiction, but nonfiction, and learning about other people's stories or other topics and all kinds of other things. And Cinema Society, that in this town, I think has been one of the coolest things. So you actually have to pay to join this club. And then I feel like I gotta go, right? But when I do go, and actually there's a movie tonight, which I could not find any information about. It would be really interesting. It might be one of the super weird indie flicks, because it doesn't even have a trailer on YouTube. So I have no idea what I'm getting into. It could be totally wacky, but and it's about the courtesans in Paris and the kind of power they wielded. It's a documentary. So it'll be fascinating, I'm sure, hopefully, if it's well done, but I could not find a trailer, so it'll be interesting. But I feel like I'm kind of obligated to go to that because I paid for this membership. I have a couple of girlfriends that I've also known for years that we meet every Thursday morning. Thursday's my day off. And we meet at the coffee shop, and then we go for a walk. We did 6 miles today, which shocked the heck out of me. And I got home and I had to like sit down for a while because I was like, I'm kind of tired. So I think if you build in to whatever it is that feeds you some sense of obligation that makes you get up and go do it. And I guess maybe obligation isn't the best word, but some sort of fail safe that does make you go do it instead of having to skip it, I think is one of the reasons I go do all those kinds of things, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If you're one that puts things on your calendars and is good at reading it, like if you're good at making yourself a schedule and then following it, I think that works. And at times in my life that has worked. Right now I'm a little scatterbrained, so I don't know if it's menopause or what, but I'm all over the place. Sometimes I put things on my calendar. I'll put it on my calendar and then not necessarily look at it. So I have to figure out other fail safes to make it happen. So
yeah, I find that the busier I get, the more distracted I get with things on my calendar as well. And signing up for something, like if I wake up in the morning and I see that I have a really busy day and I know I'm going to be tired at the end of the day, I'll reach out to a friend and say, can you meet, for coffee or something, or a walk after work, so that it's planned. Because I know by the time the end of the day comes, I'm going to be too tired. Or I'll schedule a yoga class on a day off or something so that I feel like I'm obligated, even though there's no one like forcing you to do those things. There's something about having that, like you said, kind of like a little bit of an obligation. And I think, especially in those early years where everything is just so busy and new, and setting those habits. Because if you've been in your book club for 20 years and you've been walking with this friend group for so many years, those are like patterns that you developed in the early stages, it sounds like, of your career, and they've kind of like stayed with you.
I love your cat's haircut, by the
I
way.
know, isn't it cute? I can't wait for spring to come. I'm in California, so it's not that cold, but you know, I'm north of you. You're in Southern California. I'm in
Yeah,
Northern, and it was a very, very cold winter. And
it
like
was cold here.
first, yeah, it's terrible.
Which
The
people on
first,
the East Coast laugh at me now because, of course, like cold was like it was in the 50s,
yeah,
and that's cold. So
it's so true.
yeah,
Well, it's a cold up here, and these rag dolls shed a lot, and so I
yeah.
cannot wait for the spring warmth, and they go in for line cuts. So
Another thing, kind of along that line, though, I'll tell you. I'm sorry, we got distracted with the cat, but yesterday it got me out of the clinic because my husband and I we have a personal trainer that we do virtual workouts with, and that's another thing. So I knew I had to leave work on time so that I could be at home to do this workout with my husband yesterday, and that got me out of the hospital. And I knew I had to do that, so I knew I was keeping up with my charts all day. And there you go. That was another way that I scheduling, I guess.
I love that. I'm going to do another long pause and see if anyone wants to come off mute and ask a question. And if you want to drop into the chat, if you guys have themes that you want to hear about, like if you want to hear about medicine or parenting or more business, you can feel free to drop themes into the chat or direct message me, and I'll make sure to read those out loud. Let's spice it up with a little medicine. Have you had any good fun cases this week, or do you have like a memorable case? Most of the people watching this are new and early career veterinarians. Is there anything that like stuck out to you, something that you remember from some
This
of the
week.
early days or this week?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Man, like my head is kind of pinging in a bunch of different directions. We did talk last night in our pack meeting. We were talking about difficult clients, and it made me think of a case that I had yesterday that was a client that was not a second opinion, but a new client coming from another hospital. And then, of course, I read the record, and then it hits me. Okay, I can see exactly where this is going. So it was scheduled. Patient needs a sedated nail trim, and it was listed as a 4-year-old dog, and the records come in and it's all Humane Society, and then there's one other hospital, and the other hospital, like the first thing is fractious, can't touch this dog, sent home. I think it wasn't exactly the chill protocol, but it was like gabapentin, trazodone, and ACE. And then the owner, called and left a message that was noted in the record about how the dog was never the same, and did you guys hold the dog down and abuse the dog, and like in this like long paragraph in the record. And I'm like, okay, deep breath, how do I deal with this? so that was a case that was more psychology to the owner than what do I need to do with this dog, because this was more expectations of the owner. I could tell instantly from reading the record, there's no way I'm going to separate this dog from this owner, because he does not trust veterinarians right now to handle his fractious dog. So I need to figure out how to safely handle this dog without losing this guy's trust. Because I think that's, we play a big old trust game with clients. And how am I going to build this up with this guy that already is cautious? He obviously doesn't have a whole lot of experience with veterinarians because he's just done vaccines at a vaccine clinic. And I think reading through the lines, I was like, you know what? I bet you this guy's only been to vaccine clinics, had a healthy dog his whole life. All of a sudden the dog's getting older, so now it needs more nail trims. And the Humane Society or the vaccine clinic or whatever it was said, you have to go to a full service clinic to get a nail trim. And so his first experience with that was terrible. And I get it. So I walked in, we talked about it. Turns out the dog's 9. Dog was morbidly obese. The dog did have a bite history and had bit the owner before, knew all of this, but the guy still obviously loves his dog. He had a muzzle. He had a black, one of those black basket muzzles. And so he he's like, I'm happy to put the muzzle on so that you can give an injection. And then we had a long conversation about sedation without any previous PE, because there was no way I was going to be able to touch this dog. He understood. We got a muzzle on this dog. He was like petting his dog, and then we go to give it an injection, and the dog like turns into Cujo. But I didn't separate him from his owner. And then we did 3 separate injections, kind of ramping it up. I went super conservative because it's a 9-year-old dog that I have no information on. They were there for an hour and a half because we kept waiting for it to take effect. It wasn't taking effect. And so I walked in and I said, hey, you know what? I'm not comfortable just continuing to give drugs like this, especially at this time of day. Let's revamp our plan. Like, I think we could definitely still use oral medications. Yes, they can have more of a hangover effect, but you're going to see a hangover effect from these injections today. I'm going to reverse one of them. I can't reverse all of them. And he had a buddy with him. And I think they were kind of both like ready to do battle with the new vet that wanted to do whatever. And, you know, the 2 of them, I could just see by the end had their eyes opened about what the reality was of how their pet reacted. Like, this was truly a super fractious dog and was very difficult to handle. And I said, I know you wanted to avoid oral medication, but I think for the mental health of your dog, we need to back up and we just need to bring this down just a little bit. I'm going to give you some references about muzzle training and how to properly muzzle train so that maybe we can start giving treats during an exam and just start reversing some of this, because we've gotten to a not great point. We still may need to sedate. So it turned into this like whole afternoon of psychological care of the client. And I did very little with the pet. So that was kind of an interesting case that we talked about yesterday, which definitely, like I say, that has more to do with the art of medicine than anything else. I had a hemoabdomen from last week that I wanted to know if it was still alive. Like, I had gotten this drop-off case of this dog that may have had some trauma. They were a little vague on what happened, but the dog was just sort of an ADR. And I lifted the lips on it. It's 12-year-old Schnauzer mix. Lifted the lips and went, oh, this is a very pale dog and I don't like it. And so I did a quick fast scan on the chest and the belly, and sure enough, belly full of fluid. Tap it quickly. PCV is 51 in the belly and 50, I think, circulating. And I'm like, oh, this is definitely not good. And, you know, I had to have a conversation with the owner about, you know, I'm worried about your dog, like right now. And the time of the afternoon, what I'm capable of, I'm not going to be able to open this dog. I don't even have time to ultrasound this dog. I'm not telling them that way. But I'm just kind of laying on the line where this dog is at. And I think you need to go to a referral hospital. Then it turns out this dog was always very, very active, very, very jumpy, and almost uncontrollable when it gets excited in the car, like going to the dog park. And the owner had kind of backhanded the dog and kind of swatted the dog in the car because he was trying to drive and the dog like jumped on him. And so now he's panicked that he traumatized his dog. And he's like coming at me like, did I kill my dog? And I'm like, oh, my heart's breaking. And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think you could do it. There has to be something underlying. Like, there was already something brewing, you know, and maybe that action caused it to start bleeding. But I mean, we think of like hit by car when this kind of thing happens. So anyway, now I'm going off into the psychology of that client again. But the dog did live. They did do an ultrasound on this dog, and it turns out it's a renal. It looks like probably a renal tumor that this dog has, that had probably ruptured. Stabilized though, and they're still trying to decide what they're going to do. But I'll probably see it to re-ultrasound it and see if everything still looks the same or what. But that's always kind of a tough one too, because I shipped this dog off to a referral hospital. The referral hospital is busy enough where somebody didn't send the record. I don't know. But I get back in the hospital and I'm like, is that dog still alive? Like, I was worried about this one. So it was kind of nice to find out that one was alive. So I had a skin recheck that was good.
Both
Those are,
those cases are really good, and they really like speak to the heart of like so much of what we do as veterinarians, which is so much more managing people than I think we sometimes think about, especially when we want to go into veterinary school.
yeah,
And it's why our program starts with client communication, because that is the most important thing. And I even wrote down what you said about your first case with the aggressive dog. You said, we play a big old trust game with clients. And I just think that like was so worth writing down, because that's what it is. And you spent a lot of time with this client, but I'm confident that the amount of time that you spent in that one visit is going to translate to so much like more efficiency with that pet in future visits. And so it can seem like sometimes, oh, it's taking so long, but future visits are going to be so much more efficient because of that time. So I love that you shared both of those cases. And I also want to point out that like even 20 something years out, you're still running in the clinic to look for that referral record, to wonder what happened with that patient. So for those of you new grads who are thinking about your cases at home, it gets easier and you don't think about it quite as much, I would say, but we still do. That is still something that we deal with. And maybe we can talk about, how we kind of manage all
yeah.
of that at home. I am
I
seeing
didn't
this.
necessarily
Oh,
lose sleep over it, but yeah, I woke up
right.
wondering, oh, I wonder how that dog did,
Yep.
and was curious about it. So,
Yeah.
um,
We have a good question in the chat. I'm going to go to Chelsea first, and then I'm going to circle back to Christopher's question. So as a new grad who has solo doctor days, I do find that managing staff can be one of the most challenging aspects.
absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. And that is probably one of the biggest things that has changed in the way that I approach staff in 20 years. Like the way that I approached them 23 years ago was very different than the way I approach them now. And that was also something that nobody ever really taught me how to do that. And I'll back up a little bit, and then I'll tell you how I feel like it's easiest, at least for me. And watching other doctors, I feel like this is fairly universal. But I was concentrating so hard on the medicine and the clients that I really didn't think that much about the staff. And I was under the impression that, I just asked somebody to do that, and that's what they're there for. That's their job, and that they should be happy to do it and not even have to think about it. And I kept getting feedback from my manager and the owner of the first practice that, frankly, that the staff saw me as kind of a bitch. And I was really hurt by that, because that's definitely not where my heart was. But it took me years to figure out why they felt that way. And the truth is that you really have to manage your staff in the same kind of trust relationship that you manage your clients. And so that means you need to get to know them, and you need to know what their strengths are, and you need to play into those strengths. And if you look at positive psychology in human beings, actually, it's the same with dogs, but positive reinforcement, you have to do a lot more positive reinforcement than anything else to make a big difference, right? So you have to do it. And I can't remember, this is another one. I'm going to spout things and then not remember it, but you have to say, like, you have to have like a 5-to-1 ratio. You have to be 5 times more positive than saying anything that's corrective or potentially negative feedback. And there are ways to give feedback to staff without being negative. But I think, especially when you're first starting out with a staff member, it goes a really, really long way to get to know them. And you don't have to spend a whole lot of time getting to know them. You just need to ask a couple of questions. Hey, like, tell me what one of your strengths are. Like who's my cat wrangler around here? Who should I go to with the cats? Why did you get into, what does a good day look like to you? Like, if we're going to be working together, what does a good day look like to you? What do I need to do to make it look like a good day for you? Asking for help instead of telling somebody to do something. Hey, would you mind helping me with this? the wording of the way you ask staffs things can make a big difference. I also find that when your head is like super glommed up with a lot of things, and I started doing this when I was in charge of like 50 staff members, and I cannot keep track of that many people in my head. But if I had like a quick one-on-one conversation with somebody and learned something that was a cool little nugget, like that they came from an internal medicine background and then decided they wanted to work in GP, or or that they had an interest in astronomy, which that's one of my son's huge things. So they I would actually go and I'd write them down. I started to kind of keep a little journal of people, and then I just kind of review it every so often, and then you pull up those nuggets later on, and people are really, people want to know that you care and are actually listening to them. And so if you can repeat back some of those nuggets to them later on, they get all like, ooh, wow, like this person really cares about me, and or cares about what I'm doing. And when you're giving feedback, don't just, at the end of the day, if you just always say, God, thank you guys, that was so helpful. But if you say that same thing over and over again, and you're not specific about what was helpful with your staff, they're just going to start thinking about it as like a toxic positivity. Like if you're just positive, 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 you're not really pointing out exactly why they're helpful. But if you say something like, hey, when that client was getting super chatty and then you came into the room to ask me if we needed help so that we could kind of move stuff along, that was really helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that. Or, hey, that other client, that was really hard to get a history out of them. You took a lot of time with that, and I really appreciate that. That was a great history. So the more specific you are with some of your positive feedback to your staff, the more you create that trust relationship on how you can do that. And so I think managing staff is not like when we think about managing, you talk about like authoritarian, like telling people what to do. And really it's a matter of getting them on your side, figuring out where the strong points are in your staff, and then leaning into that. And if you do really need them to do something, you could go to them and say, hey, I could really use your help. Do you think that's something you can do for me? And then, ask specifically on what it is that's going on. So that, I think to me, just staff members just feel the need to be seen for exactly what they're contributing to you. And so that kind of stuff can be very, very helpful.
I love that answer.
You're welcome.
Like the question asker liked it as well. There were really, really great nuggets in that. I'm going to get to Christopher's question for you, but just a follow-up to the one that you just asked. This wasn't asked in the question, but it's something that I hear a lot as a mentor with working with new veterinarians, is managing staff when there are generational differences. So often our newer grads are younger, and some of the seasoned technicians might have been at the practice for 30 years, and or a CSR, or a practice manager. And so there's that challenge of navigating moving from school into being a leader in the practice, which isn't necessarily something you want to be facing right away as a new veterinarian. And plus there might be generational or age differences. Do you have some tips around navigating those challenges?
Yes, I think recognizing that age is a power dynamic, whether we like it or not. So, there is wisdom as we get older. It may not always be the correct one. So, but actually listening to what they have to say instead of discounting somebody in a different generation, and just being curious about why they come from that angle, I think can go a long way in bridging that generational divide. So, hey, I saw you did this. Tell me a little bit about why you made that decision, and then just ask the questions. And I wouldn't necessarily say, oh, because I would have done it this way. I wouldn't do that. I would just ask, just to get that information out of them first, and then kind of start thinking about it. And then once you get to know them, have a little bit of trust in that relationship, then you can start kind of challenging. Well, hey, you know what? I was taught this way, and I understand why you're going that way, but here's the reasoning why I've been taught to do it this way. And what do you think of that? And see, what they say. I think if you're talking about a tech, like a tech that's been in the business for a really long time, man, they've seen stuff and they know stuff. And they're the ones that I would really listen to. Like, do not make an enemy of a tech, especially a seasoned tech, because that's one of your best friends. Like, I think like the way you approach a lot of different things, just really listening with true curiosity, and hearing what they have to say when they do some feedback, can be helpful. And then again, also just getting to know them a little bit. Hey, tell me about what's your craziest case that you've seen. And sometimes you might have to ask a few questions before they kind of light up to figure out what it is that really they want to talk about and want to share, because everybody wants to share something about themselves, and there's something that people want to be known for. You just have to kind of find that. So I know you have a talk coming up, or you did have a talk coming up about that too, generational
Yes,
stuff.
we had a talk. We did. We had our webinar last month about
Yeah,
generational differences with mentor-mentee relationships, free on demand in the Ready Vet Go community.
yeah.
Plug,
Yeah.
because it's a really important topic. But I do love that answer, and so much of it is like relatable to both like new and early career vets being leaders in their practice, but also vets at any stage connecting with clients, connecting with our staff. So much of the stuff is just managing people and learning how to connect with people. And it's approaching things from a place of curiosity, letting people feel seen and heard and valued. And those are universal themes that, can be used in specific situations. And I
Yeah.
love all this answer.
And I know, like, for the specific situation where if you were a technician in a hospital and then you get hired to work in that same hospital as a new vet, and now the power dynamic is definitely clear there. I know there was a podcast that addressed directly that, in the Uncharted podcast series. And I can't remember what it was called, but if you search Uncharted and look for that, then I know they did a deep dive into that. Power dynamic too, because that's a specific situation, but I think that does happen on a fairly regular basis, because a lot of us work as techs before we go to vet school.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good note. I'll look and see if I can find that Uncharted and post it. We're kind of wrapping up, so I think this would be a good time to ask this question, which is what some clients believe about animal medicine is sometimes amusing. Tell us one from your bag of funny stories.
Oh my God. Oh geez, put me on the spot for that one.
What's a funny story from your many years in practice?
I think the funniest just have to do with when clients really anthropomorphize.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I wish I had been asked that one earlier, because I am sure I could come up with something really good, but on the spot, I'm having a hard time coming up with something super funny.
What about something that was like really gross, or like this would only happen in a veterinary clinic?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, besides things like doing a foreign body surgery and pulling out something very personal.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff happens, which is really fun. And then trying to identify what it was. We had a foreign body that was they had just had a bachelorette party. And so like it was a little like plastic penis that was pulled out. Yeah.
That's so good. That is so
good. It's just recognizable until you like take it out. And then we're like cleaning it off and we're like, oh my God, that looks like, oh, it is.
That's so good.
That one was interesting.
I had, oh, was it visible? Was it visible
No,
on rads?
it wasn't, but yes, that was, yeah, no, it was, but it was quite hilarious. figured out what it was. And the client was super embarrassed, but we all laughed about it quite a bit, as one would.
That would be really good. Yeah,
Well,
that's a good form body.
Like a little Mario brother kind of figure thing was a toy that one was kind of funny too, because the head like popped out. It was like this little cartoonish little character that popped out of the GI tract, and I cut over there. I was like, oh, all right. So yeah.
Those are really good.
That was probably the funniest. Although I did have my first year as an intern. I remember this dog. It was a Great Dane, and it had a penchant to eat the owner's panties.
Oh yeah.
I literally did my foreign body gastrotomies was within 6 months. I did 3 panty removals on this Great Dane, and on the third we were like, please, please, please put a muzzle on this dog when you're not around, because she swore that she was like, she'd gotten like a hamper that had like a latch on it, and we're like, somehow this dog is fine and you need to figure that out. So yeah, I got a lot of experience on big dog gastrotomies with that one. That was funny.
I pulled out a corn cob on 3 consecutive summers on the same dog.
Same dog.
And we have a lake in Oakland, and I would see the dog walking around the lake with its basket muzzle on.
Yeah.
And this owner was so good. And yet, if there was a picnic and a corn cob, that dog was going to find it.
Yes, yes, yes. Some of them are.
Yeah, for you new grads and early career vets on this call, keep track of these funny gastrotomies, and do gastrotomies. Let this be a takeaway. Do gastrotomies. We're here in the Ready Vet Go community to help you, to talk you through those. They don't need to be referred. They're fun. This is just my little soapbox right now. It's a way to provide good care to our patients and do gastrotomies.
Yeah.
Any other?
You can do a spay. You can do a gastrotomy.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Spay is way harder than a gastrotomy.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Or cystotomy. I like a good cystotomy.
Oh yeah, they're fun.
Those are fun.
So. Any other final questions? This was so fun, Anne. I feel like you have so much wisdom in there that I like want to just keep our conversation going. And I'm like planning our business talk that we're going to do together. There's like so much information for you to get out to the veterinary community.
Hopefully.
I'm going to drop back into the chat at the beginning. For those of you who weren't here, this is the registration link for our next webinar. So we talked about the one that we had last month, which was navigating generational differences with your mentor. And the one we have this month is ER stabilization for the early career GP with Dr. Kate Boatwright. It's going to be a really good one. This is recorded. It is available in the Ready Vet Go community on demand. And anything that you were hoping that you would get to talk about, Anne, that we didn't cover? Any pearls of wisdom, things you want vets to know?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we hit a lot of it. I like to talk about leadership a lot, and I like everybody to have an idea, or at least be curious about the business side of it, because I think that does make a difference in how you practice. Because unfortunately, we are a business. You're not in medicine that has any fallback like human medicine does, where there's a Medicare system. And although that's, I'm sure, flawed, but at least, you have to kind of remember that. And there are ways that you can help people without feeling like you're overcharging them or anything like that. I mean, sometimes just talking through the options and letting the owner know what they're missing if we can't do whatever is good, because then they know. And as long as they know the ins and outs, to be honest, half the time you make an educated guess without all the information. And to be honest, you're going to do good, even if you don't have all the information. So I think I think that's something to kind of keep in mind. I mean, the high level of veterinary medicine that we're taught nowadays is very recent, and veterinarians have been doing good for animals for a very long time. So if you just have your head in the right place and make some educated guesses, you're going to be just fine. So.
I'm gonna like put a book of quotes. That one just made me a little bit teary. It just it is so true. And I just think as many new and early career vets that can hear that, like, you are doing a really good job and you don't need to know all the things. So many of the things are new, and vets have been doing good for generations without all of those things. I just love that little pearl. It was really good.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing we know is just how to solve a problem. And I think that's what drew me to veterinary medicine in the first place, is because that's what I love to do. I like constantly learning. I like trying to figure puzzles out. That's the whole point, right? Something different coming in every day is very stimulating to my mind. I like trying to figure it out, and being able to say, hey, I don't know, let me go look this up. I mean, that's fun. I like having to, I don't have to know all of it. No, you can figure it out. You got all the resources. So
this is such a good way to end. It is fun and it is a puzzle, and we are so lucky to be a part of this profession. And I am so grateful to have you as a Ready Vet Go mentor. I feel so lucky that we found each other and that you are here to really share your experience and your expertise and your wisdom with so many people. And I love that we can branch out from just the formal Ready Vet Go mentorship program to this, where so many people can have access to all of this amazing information. So I can't thank you enough. Thank you to all of you guys who were on the call. That conversation was really great. Thank you for dropping your questions and comments into the chat. You are so welcome. I'm so glad it was fun. It's a nice little intimate group, and then this will be available for you guys to reference later. And I might put together a book of Anne's quotes.
Nope. Better ones then.
Well, I don't know where you guys all are in the country, but it's late for some of you. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Anne. I hope you guys have a great night.
Me too. Have a good one, guys.
Bye.